Hello, anatomy students. Welcome to this video lesson on plate 103. This is referred to as the mediastinum, which, don't worry, I'll never ask you that. This is essentially the chest cavity, in which where this would all be enclosed actually, so that your lungs work properly. It's all, when I say enclosed, it would all be within kind of a closed capsule. So just think of this as being our chest cavity with some of the different blood vessels that feed the neck and whatnot. So, or drain the neck and head and arms. You have these slides. So you'll have this slide, and this slide. Now, when we're done here, I would encourage you, if you feel that you should draw or you should color this in your book in 103, that you should do so. That would be a good idea. Do the purpose games, but I'll try to go through. I just wanted you to make sure that I showed you. So if you ever had a question, you can go back and find where these are located, or at least so you would hear the pronunciation of the terms. So this one, I just want to show you a wide view. So the pericardial heart. So here, what's colored in green? We saw this in the deer heart. I believe we all looked at this and we had a really good view. Excuse me one second while I let my kitty cat outside. Okay, cotton outside. All right, so just the idea, and remember, the heart really does kind of sit maybe a little bit to the left. If we figure that right here is the midline, so essentially this is going to be what we'll learn a little bit later, the trachea. If we think of this midline running right through the heart or through the body here, the heart is maybe just a slight bit to the left. Which actually does end up meaning that our left lung, which is over here, they're kind of holding it back with this little probe. That the left lung is technically a tiny bit smaller than the right lung, and we'll actually see when we do the pig how there are more lobes on the right lung, okay, which is this pink over here, than there are the left. All right, so let me begin. I'll try not to elaborate too much on things, but I'll try to keep this under 15 minutes. All right, so what we have here, and you're familiar with a lot of these things already. In fact, all of these blood vessels that we have right here, what I'm calling what I don't call them, but what scientists call, anatomists call the great vessels. These would be ones directly leading to or from the heart. Those would be our great vessels. Yes, they are the largest of the blood vessels. So let me grab a pen tool here, and how about we do, um, I don't know, green maybe will stand out a little bit pretty well here. So here's our heart, hopefully already superior vena cava. So the superior vena cava is going to be right here. So here's number one. I'll try to label the numbers. And so our superior vena cava is going to be leading directly into the heart. So if we think of our chambers, up here is going to be the right atria, and up here would be the left atria when we think about those chambers. I actually probably should have showed you that in the previous. So let me actually just really quickly go back here and talk about where those chambers would have been. So really, we would have had there would have been a chamber here, a chamber here, chamber here, and a chamber here. Remember, we said these will all be the same. So our atria on top, our ventricles on the bottom. Remember how those ventricles seemed a lots bigger because of the walls being much thicker. But that just helps you realize, and I might even suggest you put those vague circles in just so you know where those chambers are. Okay, so let's get back to it here. Grab my green again. We said here is number one, so I'm going to try to check them off as we go. Inferior vena cava now. The inferior vena cava is actually not going to be on this picture very well. Actually, it's not at all. If I come back so I'm going to actually jump to that last slide that you actually have. So if we jump back here to this last slide, in the inferior vena cava, and if it's not on here, but it's this blood vessel right here. Remember, this would be going back underneath the heart and into the chamber here. So this would be our inferior vena, IV, C. So inferior, that's G, that's a C. So coming from underneath. Okay, because I had enlarged this so we could see the blood vessels a little better. So we have now talked about inferior vena cava. A pulmonary trunk, gonna be really small. Right here's the pulmonary trunk. So remember, pulmonary trunk is what it looks like, and it's deceiving because it looks like this pulmonary trunk is leaving this atria here. But remember, it would actually be leaving this the chamber that we would have down here, remember it would be going up and over and then out right here. So here's our pulmonary trunk, and it's really, really short little blood vessel, really wide. And then blood is leaving here, blood is leaving here, blood is leaving here, and blood is leaving here. So those are going to be those pulmonary arteries. So our pulmonary arteries over here and pulmonary arteries over here. Okay, hopefully this is still review here. Pulmonary veins coming back to the heart. So now we know that blood needs to get back into the heart here. So it's flowing in here, 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 and here. So these are going to be number 5. Now notice the stars that I put on there. Why do you think I did a red star there? So I did red stars for this, and I did blue stars for those pulmonary arteries. And you've may have realized it's the blood oxygen content. So the red will be the higher oxygen content, blue will be the lower content. All right, so now blood moves down into the left ventricle here, and now we need to get out of the heart. And so now we're going to through that aortic arch, that ascending aorta, and here's that arch that's going to go over and then back down. Now we cannot see the thoracic aorta. For that, again, I'm going to jump over to this where we can see the bottom of the heart. And so leading out of the heart, okay, or actually, so here is that the aorta. It's going to go back behind the heart, and here's the thoracic leading through. And we're going to learn this muscle right here is the diaphragm. It cuts through that. It doesn't really cut through it, but it passes through. And there's going to be that's going to be our thoracic aorta. Okay, so we have that done. So great vessels done. All right, some other vessels, some arteries. So these are ones that are not directly attached to the heart, but they're really close to the heart. Now, we've already seen some of these. So number 8 here, brachiocephalic artery. So remember when we left the heart, or when the arch, there was blood could go here, blood could go here, and it gets a little wonky here. This little nerve right here is cutting down, or blood could leave right here. So we've got this blood vessel right here. So from about this portion right here is going to be our brachiocephalic artery. So here's number 8. Okay. Now, then coming up and under, so we'll talk about this blood vessel a bit later, but coming under right here, we're going to have number 9. This is that common carotid. This is going up and doing the left side of our brain. Okay. And then the last of those 3 arteries that were coming off of our aortic arch is that left subclavian artery. So this one back here, and it's really tough to see. It's labeled over here, and I would suggest that you maybe even highlight it over here. So I'm just going to put a little 9 right here because that's because it's not a 9, it's a 10. So 10. So it's right here, passes under here, and off to our arm. Okay. So left subclavian artery. Okay. Now, some veins that we don't have that are going back to the heart. Now, I'm going to clear my screen here just to clean things up a little bit. And then I'm going to do a couple things here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a line of things getting back to the heart here. So this is coming back to the heart, and this is coming back to the heart. And so remember, in superior vena cava, we've got these blood vessels here, plus we have this blood vessel right here, and then this blood vessel right here. And again, notice how I've done the blue stars. Now, let's first talk about this jugular. So I'm going to actually do it on order here. The jugular here and a jugular here. Oops, I actually messed up. This should be left. I'll fix that in yours before I print it. I just copied and pasted. So this blood vessel here is going to be our left jugular. So left jugular, and so I'm not even going to label it. So this is going to be one of the A's. So the A's are both the jugulars, and over here is a jugular. Those are draining your brain and your head. Okay, so jugulars. Again, under low pressure, you don't feel a pulse in those. When you feel a pulse, you're actually feeling those carotids. Okay. Oh, and actually, you know what? I just remembered. I did actually skip over these 2 right here. So I'm going to do this now. I apologize. Remember how we had our brachiocephalic? So if it goes up, this is going to be the right jugular. So remember how it's going to leave the heart. Here's our right jugular. Now, then right here where it branches off, this goes here and underneath and going to pass here. It's going away from our heart. So it's an artery and it's going under the arm or to the arm. That's our subclavian artery. So the right side. So we had left and right. Okay, I apologize about that. All right, so now back to these large veins. So draining the brain, we've got the two jugulars. Now those jugulars are going to be draining the head. Now over here, so coming up from our arm, okay, and then coming up from our arm over here. So this portion right here and this portion over here would be coming from the arm, subclavian veins. So those subclavian veins would be draining the arm. So they run from this where they merge to the arm and where this merges into the arm. Now, where the carotids and the brachiocephalics come to, or excuse me, when the jugular and the subclavians come together, we form the brachiocephalic vein. So we're going to have this short brachiocephalic vein here and this brachiocephalic vein right here. So if we think about it, the brachiocephalic vein is formed by the jugular and subclavians coming together in both sides. Okay, so hopefully that helps with those major blood vessels. And let's continue on and go back and watch that again. I do apologize for that wonkiness there with missing um, those earlier arteries. All right, so now if we talk about some of the other things that we have here that aren't blood vessels, but we can actually see. And so I'm going to grab black for this one. Okay, now the thymus gland is not shown. The thymus gland is actually kind of covering the heart. We'll see this. The thymus gland would be up in this region here. We'll see this on our pig when we get into our pig. But again, that's not shown, but it's going to be in this region here. And it just depends, but it's a gland that kind of covers these things. It does several things for us. The trachea. So I already mentioned trachea here. So here's our trachea. That's our windpipe. That would be leading to the lungs. Behind that, then we have the esophagus. Now, the esophagus is behind it here. That's going to pass underneath the heart and actually come back out right here. So we also have the esophagus right here. So we'll label that number 2. The trachea doesn't come out down here because the trachea leads to the lungs. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'll put our lungs on here. So here's a lung, here's a lung. So right lung, left lung. Okay, done esophagus. Let's talk. I'm going to jump to this muscle that's right along here. It actually runs horizontally. This is your diaphragm. So the diaphragm is what when we breathe. So when we breathe in, take a big breath in, the diaphragm actually goes down. When that goes down, that actually pulls air into your lungs. Because remember I said this is a sealed closed cavity. So if this moves down, we've got to fill that space. And so air is going to rush into the lungs. When we breathe out, this pushes up. And actually, it doesn't really necessarily push, but it naturally goes back to this position. And that's going to expel air. Okay, so that works. Those work in tandem. Now we've got a couple nerves. And so we've got a nerve in the aqua color here. And then we have a nerve up here. The aqua colored nerves running all the way down here to your diaphragm. This is called the phrenic nerve. So the aqua colored ones here, these are the phrenic nerves. Now, you have, if you've ever had the hiccups, what happens with hiccups is actually it's a spastic phrenic nerve. And sometimes it's actually caused by, you can't tell necessarily exactly right here, but especially this nerve over here gets really close to the esophagus, as it turns out. And if you take I often notice that I'll get hiccups whenever if I chew a piece of food and I don't chew it up enough and I swallow a large piece of food, it will sometimes actually, the way the anatomy works together, that large piece of food may actually touch, at least the esophagus will kind of bulge out, it will touch this phrenic nerve and it actually can cause it to spasm. And so that spastic phrenic nerve are hiccups. And then finally, we have the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is going to be controlling some involuntary actions and some things that we have up here in our chest cavity. And so the vagus nerve, we'll talk about that when we do pig. The vagus nerve is this blue. So you do have technically the right and left vagus nerves. Okay. All right. So that's a run through of the mediastinum. Hopefully that was helpful. I know it looks pretty crazy, but we've known the heart, and that's actually why I did the heart anatomy first, is so this wouldn't look so overwhelming. Hopefully you were successful in doing this. Now I would suggest going on purpose games Quizlets to master this anatomy. All right, thanks for watching.